Well, here we all are getting to know you. So I want to start out by saying it's been a hell of a day. Anyway, I always get nervous. If you guys would make sure there's no answering machines in the background, no phones ringing.
Good luck.
Okay. So let me start by saying welcome to Getting to Know You. Tonight's panel graduated in 1974 and 75 and share the fact that we all grew up in Wonton, New York and attended the same high school. Back then, we were more known for what we didn't have in common, but 46 years later, I believe we share a lot in common, including perhaps good memories of the town we grew up in. The goal of the show is to talk a little bit about then and understand the paths our lives have taken since we graduated. The show is not that long, but we should be able to get through all my questions. I'll remind the panel to please mute when I'm not speaking. Right now, I can hear background noise. Unmute yourself when you want. Feel free to respond to something else which somebody has said. We will be taking questions from the live audience, so that'll be interesting. This is a live show, and it'll be available on YouTube. So don't say any secrets you don't want anybody to say. You don't want anybody to know. And before we get started, I just want to announce that the next broadcast will be May 24th. Fred Arnowich, Gary Hughes, John Rappaport, Meredith Melville, Nancy Navin, and a surprise guest will be on that show. So tonight we have Ann Freis. If you just raise your hand, there you are, Ann Freis, and Fede. But is that close? And you can go off mute.
It was Fede.
Fede. Okay, since we have two Anns, and I only know Ann as Ann Freis, I'm going to say Ann Fede. Okay, so we have Michael Lane in the upper right-hand corner. We're supposed to have Robert Bills, but he has not called in. We have Seth Bornstein, and both Michael and Seth graduated in 74, as did I. And in the upper left-hand corner, we have our special guest, Jean Preller. So she's waving. So anyhow, I got some feedback on the last show. So what I want to say is don't run on with your answers. Try to be precise but pithy and funny and humorous. So we're going to start with Ann Fede. So, Ann, I know nothing about you. So
yeah.
I don't know where you went to grade school. So can you tell us how your parents ended up in Wantagh?
Well, we moved from New Jersey when I was in 7th grade. So I didn't start till Wantagh Middle School. So I didn't grow up in Wantagh at all. I went to school in New Jersey. We came over and went to the high school. You don't know me also probably because I was actually in the class of 76 and I graduated a year early.
Oh, this is perfect. So I graduated early. Michael Lane graduated early. Seth actually graduated in the class of 74. And I'll explain that story in a second. So I thought I remembered that you're from 76, but now we know that. That's cool. That's good.
But I had a lot of friends, none of you, but a lot of friends that were in the drama club. That was my big connection. So I knew Bruce and Howie and lots of different people that way.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to Michael Lane because I'm going to tell Michael's story. Michael said, Glenn, I need to be on with people I know. So then I left a message with Ann Freis and said, hey, Ann, can you call me? And she calls me and I said, I have a little favor to ask of you. And she goes, oh, Glenn, I know exactly what you're going to ask. And she said, okay, I'll do it. But then I said, if she does it, Jean will do it. So So we have 3 people on here. So who
3
knew?
reluctant people.
Oh, come on. Seth is the only one, and Fede who volunteered. All right, Michael, what was your grade? What grade school did you go to, and how did your parents end up in Wantagh?
Well, my parents, as most parents, were from Brooklyn, as were my grandparents. So, as I was born there too. And they moved to St. Louis when my brother was born. My older brother Jeffrey was born. And since my mother didn't have anybody there, when I was born, they moved back to Bell Harbor. So I've always been by the beach. Then they moved to Wantagh. They bought a house in the Holiday Park area. Spent the extra $500 for an extra bathroom, which is a little less than I just spent for remodeling mine. And then I started at Forest Lake School in kindergarten, and then was bused over to Sunrise Park, which I always hated. And when it was time for my younger brother to go to elementary school, he was in Forest Lake, and my mother said, "I'm not having kids in different schools." So I got put back into Forest Lake, and in 3rd grade. So that's my trajectory.
Yeah, Robert Berg had the same thing. He said he had to go to Sunrise Park School,
Right.
because his home address on Holiday Park Drive was that, right on that edge.
Right, and it was kind of sad because when I left Sunrise Park, all my friends on my block were still at Sunrise Park. So it's I've sort of lost that connection for a couple of years until we got into junior high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like Danny Fields, Richie Block, Marty Cole. So it was kind of strange, but it worked out.
All right. Thanks. So, Seth, I'm going to admit to a mistake, a booking mistake. All right. So, Seth said, "Hey, I'll do the show." And me thinking, "Oh, Seth from class of 75. And so the other day when I was putting these pictures together, I said, "I can't find your picture." And so he sent me some pictures. And then, I said to him, "What class did you graduate in?" And he said 1974. And he's a real 74. So he's born in 1956. So, anyway, we're glad to have you. Where did you go to grade school? How did your parents end up in Wantagh?
I was at Forest Lake. My folks, like most of Brooklyn in 1959, moved from the same building literally in Flatbush to Wantagh Holiday Park, another corner from Michael. And literally, it was like we moved there because our neighbors and friends in Flatbush moved there. So I really knew all the kids already by the time I moved into Holiday Park. We lived in the Ocean Parkway or Troy Avenue in Flatbush. And I was there. We were there home with them a whole school year till high school. And it was a great neighborhood to grow up in. And I was fortunate. I went to Forest Lake, walked to school, walked to middle school and high school, and have really my parents split up, left Wantagh back in '74 after I graduated. So I really have no connection to the community anymore. But I do have fond memories, and I still have a lot of close friends from my grade school, and a couple of people from kindergarten, literally, who I speak to, which is great.
Wow. Interesting. So did you know Michael?
Yeah, sure. Michael, we were on the school paper together, I think. The
School
Warrior.
paper. We played basketball at Harry Samuelson.
Harry Samuelson, right? I mean, there's a lot of neighborhood stuff, and I have very fond memories of you. And your brother was in theater. I remember going to shows that your brother produced or directed, and a few years older than I am, I think. And it was a great neighborhood for kids. There must have been 100 kids just in my class, my age. And some were bussed over to the other schools, but we all connected by the time we got to high school, which was great.
Cool. Hey, and Fede, something I forgot to ask you. Where did you live in Wantagh?
Well, I lived right at Wantagh and Beltaw Avenue, right at the corner across from the gas station. So I
God,
walked to school. Do you know where that is? I mean, my parents, it's funny because I've been watching this a while, and we were the local poor people. Our house was rented. We lived there for all the time I was in high school, but and junior high, but they didn't own the house, and we lived right there on the corner. So I would just cross the street, past the gas station, and right down the street to the high school and junior high.
cool. Yeah, that's very interesting for sure. Okay, so Anne Freeze, it's your turn. I know you're talking to someone. So,
I
hey,
was trying to adjust the lighting. I'm so sorry about my glasses. I just have my kitchen lights just in the glasses, but I want to see you guys, so I'm going to keep them on.
oh, well, then we're going to throw you out. No, no, no.
Okay, no.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I've known you forever. So
forever.
So you and Sue step. So
And yeah.
yeah. So how did you end up? I don't know the story how you ended up in Wantagh, but where did your parents move from?
My parents moved from Jackson Heights in 1960, so I was 3, and my brother was 8 at the time. And my first friends were Jeannie and Sue Estep. They were on Adelphi Road, and they're very, very dear and close friends to this day. So I'm so appreciative of that. And also, our parents were all very close and did a lot of things together. And I've been able to see Jean's mom and Sue's mom on occasion. So we've always stayed in touch, and it's been wonderful. That's how I ended up on Adelphi Road.
And I know from Jean you had a fun street and lived around the corner from all your friends. And
we did, right? Yeah, because we hung out with you on Princeton Drive, and so it kind of linked up there from Adelphi Road. And we all hung out together. In summertime, the bikes would come out. We'd all be on our bikes in the street. So it was great. It was a great childhood and great friends.
what we had Miss Coleman together.
Yes. I was going to say, as one of my influential teachers, she was wonderful. And if you remember, her husband was in the Navy, so she only taught at Wantagh for 1 or 2 years. But she was a great teacher, and I've never forgotten her.
And my kindergarten teacher lived on your street.
Yes, Mrs. Weaver. Yes.
Unbelievable. So
I remember where she lived, and I thought she and her husband were so old, probably were younger than I am now. But
no,
yes,
I think Mrs. Weaver was always 75.
Always 75, right?
Yeah. Well, as I recall. So so it's inevitable, Jean. So I need to ask you, where'd your parents move from, and how'd you end up in Wantagh?
My parents moved from Queens Village. My father married the girl next door, and they
Literally.
then they moved to Levittown, and then shortly thereafter moved to Wantagh and built an extension on the top floor and a back room as more and more kids came along. I was next door neighbors to Sue Estep, and Anne was 4 or 5 houses down. So yeah, we did have a good childhood playing Ringalivio and Spud and all the street games that you don't see anymore.
And you went to elementary school where?
I did. I went to kindergarten with you guys on Beach Street, and then off to St. Francis till 8th grade, and then junior high at Wantagh High School.
Cool.
Junior high.
Cool. All right. Well, okay. So going back to Anne Fede. So Anne, you graduated early. And so you must have had an idea of what you wanted to do. You were goal oriented. You wanted to get out of there.
I wanted to get out of there, and I wanted to get away from home. I mean, part of it was my parents were leaving. They moved. We wound up moving back to New Jersey. But part of it, I don't know. I realized that if I didn't graduate early, I was going to wind up with a junior year and a senior year with a lot of study halls, like several study halls. And I heard somebody else saying that they were offered. I don't even know who suggested this to me, that just if I stuffed everything together in my junior and senior year, I just wouldn't have any study halls and I would just be able to graduate. But I don't know that I had any plans. at all, just to get out. I don't know. You know, why do you do these things? I don't know. I had, I think, some difficulty with some of the people in my class, which now seems all silly, and I wanted to be a big kid and get out of there. And I was really only 17 when I graduated. So that's kind of seems so young now, you know? So yeah, I don't know.
What did you end up doing? Did you go to college? How did you end up
Yeah.
where you are
So,
now?
well, my parents kind of moved around a bit and then wound up in New Jersey. And I went to Ramapo College, which is in Mahwah. I don't know if anybody's heard of that.
Yeah,
It's kind of like northern Bergen County. And I got a degree in, well, it was a Bachelor of the Arts, but it was in music, because I had been all through high school. I had been involved in the chorus. I had been involved in the theater and all that. And so I went and I got this degree that was almost useless, you know. But I also met my first husband there. And then we moved to Colorado so that I could take the Montessori education training program, which is what I did right after we got out of college. Right after I graduated, we moved to Colorado, and I was in Colorado for many years. Now I'm in Florida. But yeah, most of my adult life then, and raising kids and everything, was all in Colorado. And my parents moved, they went down to Florida. So I really haven't been back to Wantagh in so many years, a lot of years.
So if there was a reunion, would you go to the class of 75 or to 76? Or you wouldn't go at all?
I'd like to go to one that's both, because I truly did have friends in both classes. I probably would go now that there's been more, Facebook stuff. Initially, I would not have gone. but you're kind of finding out more about people and where they are and what they're doing, and how you have more in common with people than you thought you did when you were there in high school. I always felt kind of disenfranchised. Somebody last night was saying that too, that she didn't really, my only really strong connection was through the music department, through the drama department. But I was also really into my education, and I feel like we were really well educated in Wantagh at the school.
Yeah. Yeah. It was done in Napolitano saying that she just felt like she wanted to leave. And, I had the same plan, graduate early. And so graduated on August 14th, 1974, and took off the next day. And didn't go back until like 1999. So, well, so how many kids and grandkids?
So I in Colorado we had 6 kids. I have 5 birth daughters and 1 adopted son, and they range from 26 to 39. So I started out really young. And now I also have 6 grandchildren too. My daughter and her husband and 2 granddaughters live in the Tampa area. I'm in kind of Central Florida, in between Tampa and Orlando, because I'm still working in Orlando. I'm teaching still. And then I still have other kids and their families up. It's kind of in the Denver, Boulder, Colorado area. Let's see. So I kind of was raising kids, but also sort of teaching off and on, and throughout the years. And then finally started working full time as a teacher when my youngest was, I think she was about 5, something like that. Wound up getting a divorce, have a new husband who's wonderful. In Colorado, I spent a lot of time doing theater also. Once I got divorced, I did all the fun things. So I got involved with choirs again, and in the community theater in Colorado. I did that for years, dinner theater. But we moved back down here because my daughter was already down here when, you know, COVID started, everything closed down. There was no theater. There was no fun in Colorado anyway. And we were kind of wanted to be closer to my oldest daughter. And we were kind of sick of the weather, to be honest with you. Any of you live, you know, I know Mindy lives down here too, but I don't know if anybody else lives down here. Yeah, so I'm still teaching now. I know that a lot of people have retired and everything, but I still really enjoy it. I teach first and second and third grade combination in a private school in Orlando. And yeah, and so, you know, I enjoy being around my grandkids, and I enjoy working and going to the beach and all that. I'm sad that I still haven't gotten back into a choir or a community theater, but I'm sure that eventually I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that another thing I just do want to say, you probably are going to ask this question, but another thing that I really got from high school was an ability to write. Like, I feel like the language arts program was super good. I had one teacher named Mrs. Axelrod, who I had. Anybody have her? I had her in, and a lot of people didn't like her, but I had her in through middle school, and then I had her husband in high school, Jeff Bennett. But anyway, I feel like she gave me so much encouragement in terms of writing that was one thing that I've always my whole life then felt really like a really strong writer. And it's also really sad to me to see kids that really don't have a grasp of it. But that was another thing that I felt really good about in high school was, you know, the ability to really communicate that way.
Yeah.
And it carried me really well, you know, going to school. I also got a master's degree at some point in the integration of the arts into curriculum. That was a super fun one. And have really enjoyed doing that because I've also taught music to kids and dance to kids, and I integrate a lot of arts stuff in my classroom. So
that's cool.
So I was kind of like a lot of businessy people I've been hearing about, and I was sort of the fun, free-loving, artisty type.
Oh, that's cool. Well, in the first show, we had an artist who went to the Oakland Institute for Art, Mindy Graber. So, okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Michael Lane because chicken.
Well, I had, you know, a path. After I graduated, I had the choice to go to either School of Visual Arts for photography or to Hampshire College. And I was on the wait list for Hampshire College. Decided to go, but I got in for the spring. So I took a half year and I worked at the Paperback Booksmith at the Sunrise Mall, which was, you know, made a lot of money for me at that time, but it all went to Hampshire College, which was at the time the most expensive school in the country at $5,000 a year. So, you know, for anybody who's paid for their kids' college, you know what a bargain that was.
Yeah.
And I only stayed there for one semester. It just wasn't for me in the end. Then went back to Wonton. My parents said, you got to go back to college. So I wound up going to Stony Brook for a year. And of course, you know, Anne Freis was there on my floor. So we've been friends for over 50 years. She was at my bar mitzvah. She was at both my kids' bar mitzvahs, at both my weddings. So went to Stony Brook for a year. Then in my second semester at Stony Brook, I managed to get into Sonny Fox's TV class. He sort of became a friend and mentor, and he got me a job at WPIX in New York. So I left Stony Brook, went to work at WPIX, where I met my first wife. And while I was there, I got a grant from the TV Academy to take a production course in New York through the New School. So that was my third college. After I left that, I got into the TV and radio program at NYU, where I graduated. Somehow I did all this in 4 colleges in 4 years. Graduated, stayed in New York, worked on, my first job in TV was with the Stanley Siegel, second job actually, after WPIX, was with the Stanley Siegel Show, if anybody remembers that show. That was the precursor to Regis. Worked there for a year, then wound up at Good Morning America, at their front desk for a few months, and then did a year at Another World, the soap opera, in production, then wound up as a casting director in New York for about 8 years. In that time, I got married, had 1 kid. When the second kid came along, decided to go make some real money and went into the chicken business with my father. My grandfather retired. They had owned a live poultry market up in Harlem, which my grandfather and his cousin started in 1929. And when he finally retired, my dad needed help. So I said, all right, second kid's here. I better go make some money, buy a house. Not what I wanted to do, but felt like that was what I had to do. Did that for a year or two. And then the family bought another live poultry market in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which was Crack Central in the 80s. Did that for about 15 years. Retired at age 45. Haven't worked since, which is fun but not lucrative. Met my second wife in 2000, and she was an agent. I always kept my friends in show business, and both my brothers are writers. So I met my second wife at the CBS Upfront show in 2000, and we were together for about 2 years when her company moved her to LA. So I was kind of bi-coastal for 3 years because I didn't want to go anywhere until my younger son was out of college. Out of high school, excuse me. So once he was out of high school, I had sold my business in 2002. And by 2005, 2006, I moved out to LA, where we've been for 15 years. I would never move back to New York. Sorry, all you diehard New Yorkers. But once you live in LA, you don't want to go back. And in 2009, another son came along. So I've got 3 boys, ages almost 36, almost 34, and almost 12. And while I see, a number of my old friends are great grandparents now, I've got a kid in elementary school. No grandchildren. One son works in cybersecurity. The other works in video game licensing. And the other is just, cute kid who never you ask him what he wants to be when he grows up, he says he always wants to be a kid. As I think we all do. So I live on the outskirts of celebrity, since my wife was a very high-powered talent agent. Now she's a high-powered talent manager. And I've known the famous, the infamous, and it's been a fun life. I've had a lot of fun, and right now I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I take care of the house, which makes me very happy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could have a kid at that age. I don't think I'd be good at raising a 12-year-old.
It keeps you young.
Yeah, I'm sure. So that's very interesting. I've somebody in the audience asked a question, so I'm going to interject it after we're through with this part. So I'm going to go to Anne Freis. So here's you were so worried about this question when you were talking to me on the phone. Glenn, I haven't done anything. You've been so much. So,
Not in the traditional sense, right?
Not
so
true.
go ahead.
Oh, well, um, okay, well, I was on track to go to Stony Brook, and I did, and Michael was there, and it was wonderful. I was majoring in music, but I just wasn't comfortable, and it was expected that I would go to college, but I left and went to a business school instead. I mean, not a secretarial business school, and learned, bookkeeping, accounting, typing, and I just wanted to work. And I just didn't want to live away from home. I wasn't ready. So I ended up getting my first job in the music business in Manhattan. And I worked there for about a year. And I was led to an entertainment law firm through a fellow employee. And I decided to go over there because they were willing to train me to be a paralegal. So I felt like I had some sort of good training. I was a legal secretary and a paralegal, and I ended up doing the immigration work for that entertainment law firm for 9 years before I had my first child. And it was challenging, it was exciting, and it was for any musical acts or bands from overseas that needed to work in the United States. They needed a particular work visa, an entertainment work visa. So that was my job at this law firm. So that's what I did until I had our son, Jimmy. I actually married Jimmy Schweckel, who was from Wantagh, the class of 1973. But I did not know him until after he had graduated. So I met him when he was already in college through Lisa Fass and Jeff Fass. So I was friends with Lisa and he was friends with Jeff, and we met her at their house. So that was really nice. And so I had our first son in 1986, and I stayed home with him, and I had our daughter in 1988, stayed home and raised them, worked part-time at several little jobs here and there. I became very involved with Meals on Wheels once they were in school full-time, and that was so fulfilling for me. But unfortunately, last year with the pandemic, since our meals were supplied through Huntington Hospital, we had to suspend it. And as of now, we're not back yet. But that's been very close to my heart all these years. And I worked, I'm a crafter and I call myself an artist. I'm not that great, but I've always loved making, floral arrangements, jewelry, different crafts like that. I had a few part-time jobs, and then I ended up working in the school system as a one-on-one aide with kids with autism or on the spectrum. And that was so fulfilling for me. And I did that for the length of the time my kids were in school. And then I ended up working in the insurance industry, which was very strange. It was a friend of ours who owned an insurance agency, and we were out to dinner one night, and he asked me if I'd be interested in insurance. And, all I knew is that Jeannie's dad owned an insurance company, and that's really all I knew about it, insurance. But I took him up on it, and he taught me commercial insurance, and I loved it. I did all the administrative work for all the commercial accounts, and I loved it. And I did that for 15 years. And then I left there a few years ago. And since then, I've been working on my jewelry business. I have a very small little shop on Etsy, if anyone's heard of Etsy. So I sell my jewelry on there, and I also sell it privately. And I volunteered in a nursing home, which I've also loved, but I'm just back with that now. I had a whole year where I was not able to do that. But my mom lived in Florida. My parents moved to Florida after I got married. And when she got sick, I couldn't be with her as much as I wanted. I tried to go down as much as I could, but I felt that I could help someone maybe up here who needed a daughter who wasn't here. So that's what I started to do. And that's also been extremely fulfilling, just to visit people that need some love, and to feel wanted. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm very, very happy. I've been married for 40 years. Jim is still working. And I have 2 little grandkids. My son, Jimmy, lives in Rockville Center. He has a little girl, Evie, 5, and a son, Ben, 3. And our daughter, Laura, and I was listening to you, our daughter, Laura, lives in Evergreen, which is a suburb right outside of Denver. And she lived in Boulder for a couple of years. She moved out there cold, knowing nobody, and said, I just have to be out here, and she loves it. So she's married now. No grandkids yet, but I have two with Jimmy, so I'm very blessed and very happy. And that's the scoop right now.
Cool. Fran Miller says, and Freis, you look the same as ever.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Fran.
We've got other audience comments, but so Seth, I know you the least. I can actually say I know Ann better, Ann Fede better than you. So
Okay.
why don't you tell us what happened to you
Um,
after you graduated?
sure. As I said, I was in the school paper. Michael was on it, and in '73, there was a high school script convention, Syracuse University. Went up there with Henry Fortunato. Some of you may remember Henry. He was the editor of the paper then. And we won the scholarship contest for all the school papers, which was great because the funny story is the competition was Deerfield Academy. The editor was Chip Cronkite, the son of Walter Cronkite. So the scrappy high school kid from Montauk won the whole thing. And I won a scholarship to Syracuse. I was there for a year. And like Michael, I wasn't happy where I was. So I transferred and I went to Partial School of Design here in Manhattan. I always wanted to live in the village, and I did. And I had a great 4 years. I have a degree in fine art, but I always wrote. And to Ann Fede's compliment about language arts, I love the teachers. And Mrs. Rosen was a great teacher. Mrs. Shembri was English teachers, really taught me. And I wrote a lot of plays. Graduated college '78, and I had a degree in environmental design, which sounds great, but I had no clue what to do. So I went to Europe for about a year. Had a little money. I worked a number of jobs during college and flew to Europe and just bummed around. I was the obnoxious kid, black, smoking cigarettes in cafes and left back, thinking that was cool. I wrote nothing then, but I had a great time. Came back and I get a job. So I wrote a lot of plays while I was in New York and off Broadway. I had some things produced. Nothing coming to Hollywood, Michael. I would have liked that, but I always stayed here in the city. Then I got a job with a small nonprofit here in the city, helping people start their small business. And long story short, I'm still there. I'm the director. I've been on roll for 44 years. It's a really good nonprofit. We help people, mostly immigrants, minorities, women, low-income people, help them start their small business. Along the way, I met my wife Diane traveling in Europe in '83 on a bus in Russia. Literally, we met each other. She's from Omaha, Nebraska, living in New York, studying to work in the United Nations. Came back to New York, and I couldn't find her. Those are the days before internet, cell phone, and everything. So we had a lot of miscommunication, and we ended up meeting each other and connected a few months after I got back from Europe and married in '87. We had twin daughters in 1990. We were living in a great apartment on Grove Street in Greenwich Village, which was really great for one guy, good for a couple, not really good for twins, family of four, and 2 flights of steps, 3 rooms. So we ended up moving to Omaha, Nebraska, where Diane's from. Her parents had come live with us, and it was great. I mean, I'm a real diehard New Yorker. I mean, New Jersey's the other side of the world, upstate to the Bronx. So moving to Omaha was a big deal. But it worked. We had a great time. Career-wise, it was not good. I just couldn't connect there. Diane's background was international affairs, and Omaha's not exactly the center of international affairs. So I got a job back in New York with a nonprofit I was with, and was there. That was 1996. Came back to the city and moved around. We lived in Forest Hills and New York City. And about 6 years ago, when it's obvious the kids not coming back home, we moved close to the UN. We live here in Midtown Manhattan, and I still work. I love what I do. I still write. I wrote a few plays over the years, and I actually just finished during the pandemic when everybody's making bread. I wrote a novel. I figured this is the time, so it's still in the works, But I love doing that, and I really do credit Joan Rosen. Like going back to her, she was such an influence on me in high school. My wife is going to retire this year. I have no plans to. We like to travel. We until the pandemic, we like to eat out, walk around the city. But that's been limited, obviously. That's coming back. New York is really, I love it. I love traveling. I love LA. I've been there a number of times, Michael, and I really do enjoy it. I was out there 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Larry Turkheimer, some of you may remember him. Turkheimer. Larry lives out there and he ran a charity swim to teach kids to swim, a swimathon. So I flew out there, and I'm a terrible swimmer, but I had a great time with Larry and Peter Holbrook and some other wonderful folks around the area. It was a lot of fun to connect. And I'm sort of active on Facebook, so I see people connect. And unfortunately, they reach a certain age, and people start to leave, and that's been the rough part. Very fortunate. I died about 2 years ago. We were very close. Got to see him a couple of weeks before the end, and that was really very meaningful to me. But that's, I guess, the hard part of as you reach a certain age. Now that I'm a year older than most of you, the big thing is Medicare. We discuss how to get the card, what to do. It's all very complicated. But I try to be positive. My dad is 100 years old, lives in Florida. I saw him 2 weeks ago, flew down there. The guy's in
Wow.
great shape, happy and healthy. And his wife died about 4 years ago. He was in mourning for a good 2 hours, 50 minutes. And now he's with Estelle, the widow next door. She's geographically desirable, very sweet. My mom is 95. She lives in Westbury in a senior home. And she's got limited memory at this point, but she's still there. And some man, I don't know if any, I have a disabled older brother, and he's still with us in Huntington in a group home. So I do have family. My sister's out in Amityville, so I do get out to visit my brother and my sister. Not as often as I probably should, especially this year. It's been a good run. My twin daughter's one is getting married next year in Omaha. She met her husband to be in kindergarten in Omaha, and they reconnected through a cousin of hers 5 years ago. And so we'll be going out to Omaha in July to look at venues for the wedding, which will be fun, I hope. So it's been, it's great to connect with people, and I love seeing what people are doing, and it's good to see everybody.
Yeah. That was a great story. You have not lost your New York accent. That's
No,
for
I
sure.
haven't. No, when I was living in Omaha, Nebraska, people have smiled at me and asked my wife, "What did he just say?"
Yeah. Is he from Australia? Yeah, something like that. But no, that's a very interesting story. My father lived to 95. So, and he was sharp right till like 4 days before he passed. So, anyway, I'm going to start with a different question at this point because I know Gene doesn't want the trajectory question. So, somebody asked online, what did you want to do when you were in high school? And have you essentially accomplished what you wanted to do? Are you doing what you wanted to do?
That's a question for me.
Yes, it is. It's a surprise question.
Good question. Yeah, it's a very good question. In high school, I wanted to be a forest ranger. I wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to travel. I didn't do any of those things. I wanted to open a bookstore. I didn't do that. I wouldn't say that I'm not fulfilled. I am happy with where I've ended up. I do like to do things outdoors and garden, as you know. So maybe some of that came to fruition. I wanted to travel. I did go to Europe and bought a bus pass and traveled around the US, and Glenn and I travel. So I'm okay.
Yeah, you got the travel. We go to Bali. I'm offering you a trip, every other day?
Yes, exactly. Cheap tickets. Let's go.
Yes.
I have a job.
I get a cheap ticket email every day. And like yesterday was Hawaii, for $300. So I didn't tell you about that one. But
Thank you.
yeah, but I can attest to that you love being outdoors. You love hiking. We have an amazing yard, flowers everywhere. So, and it's only going to get nicer. And Seth, if it wasn't for Facebook, Gene wouldn't be sitting in that seat. So it was through Facebook, very early years that we met up again. So and Fede, did you clearly?
Well,
It seems like you did what you wanted to do.
yeah, I guess I did. I remember though. I remember my father used to say to me, "Well, you could always be either a teacher or a nurse," which I hated. I didn't want to do either of those things. I guess I wanted to go into music professionally, and so here I became a teacher. I don't know why that happened. I just sort of fell into it. But I have, had the chance then to be in choirs, to do that part of me that's so important to my well-being. And honestly, it's been super fun sharing music then with kids. I guess you can tell from the 6 children and 6 grandchildren that I really do like children a lot. And so, I guess I am really lucky that I get to continue doing those things throughout my life. I don't know that there was anything else that I had focus on or anything. There's a couple things I thought of too, was that unfortunately, when I left high school, I actually went to community college and then was admitted into Fredonia. And that was like a really big deal music school over in near Buffalo. But at the last minute, my father wouldn't pay for it. So that's when I came back. And I wound up going to Ramapo College. So that kind of changed a lot of the trajectory for me. But I don't know. I'm glad in the way it went. So
Yeah.
You never know how these things are going to go.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to Seth. Seth, did you, it appears that you've lived your dream.
I try to, my dad is such an optimist. He's been through some stuff, and I've been through tough stuff too. We all had. And, the most important thing I think is really, trying to overcome adversity and, enjoying the moment. Is such a cliche, but friendship is really important. Family is really important. And I've been fortunate, I've been tight knit. And me and my little family, my wife and my 2 daughters are very tight. They live close by. I have friends since before grade school. Deb Ruby and Don Ruby and twins Cliff Lamb. I see them not regularly, but we were in contact, and friendship is really important, especially when I was a little kid, and it was good to have friends because my family life was a little odd. My parents had a rough marriage, and having friends around. And our neighborhood there, I was fortunate; it was a small village. That's been good, and I'm married up in every way. I have a great wife, and we all have troubles and issues that go on. And the last year has been really tough. So many, and I work with a lot of people who've had really horrible, tragic times. So it always keeps a perspective of what's important, and
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that.
Are the Rubians on Facebook?
Deb Rubin is. Don's out in California, San Francisco. Deb here lives here in New York City. She's in city government too. So I don't think I've gone a month in my life without speaking to Deb or contacting her. I don't know where I lived or where I traveled. Deb Ruby and Cliff Lamb, who live 2 doors away from me, and we just connected a few years ago, a bunch of guys from my class. Larry Tuckham, Steve Zeidman, Jeff Siegel, a whole bunch of these guys, Peter Luftig. And it was really, we printed up T-shirts. We were just 58 years old, so the T-shirt said, on the cusp of 60, but still 18 in spirit. I should have worn mine tonight. And we don't see each other, but we connect each other on Facebook and everything.
No, that's good. Turkheimer said that he was very pleased watching the show.
Oh,
So,
great! Yeah,
so you know.
He's great. I saw him 4 years ago in California. It was a great time. It was an interesting time. We had this charity swim, and a couple weeks before that, I had lost a friend of mine. I was really negative and down, didn't want to travel, but I got there. It was so great to connect with him. It really lifted my spirits. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I hope he does it again sometime because I'm ready to go. Bring everybody else with me. Even if you don't swim, it's still fun to hang out.
Yeah. I'm just going to answer a question from the audience. Bob Bills was scheduled for tonight. We're going to move him over till the 24th. So I know that somebody in the audience is asking. So, Anne, what did you want? Is it the life that you wanted? Well, obviously it's the life you wanted because you've got a great life. But what did you want to do in school?
It's interesting. Yeah.
Go ahead.
In school, I wanted to, do something with music. I played piano most of my life, and that's been just so special for me. And I started majoring in music at Stony Brook before I left. I knew I wanted to be in the music industry. I just didn't know I'd end up in the business end of it. And the one thing I regret is when I had all the connections, I was composing and arranging, and I had the people I needed to hear my stuff, and I never took advantage of that. So I do regret that, because I I knew a lot of people that could have helped me. But and I did go back to school. I ended up going back to Empire State College, which is part of SUNY, but that was like about 10 years ago, before COVID hit. Now a lot of people are online, but it was wonderful. So I was able to finish my associate's degree, and now I'm considered a junior. I have enough credits for 3 years, so I do want to finish that, because I do regret that I never did at the time. But my life, yes, I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I think I probably should have been born a couple of decades sooner, maybe. I enjoyed being at home with the kids, and raising them and taking care of the home. But like I said, I always did do something. I always needed to be doing something to contribute to the household in whatever way I could. So, but I'm very blessed. I'm very happy with our life. I'm grateful to be living near our son with our grandkids. I miss our daughter terribly, but we are going to go out next month. So it'll be a year and a half since I've seen her. So really, really anxious to do that out in Evergreen, Colorado. And also mentioning Colorado, I just did want to say that Debbie Altschuler, who I know many of you know, she and I have remained close. And one of the great things about Laura living in Colorado is whenever we do go out there, I see Debbie and her husband, Brett. And she would never do anything like this, but I will tell her that, I mentioned her on the show. So I'll be seeing her next month. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Ray Matuza said he never knew that about you, that you wanted to be in the music business.
Oh,
I've been
probably
told,
never said anything to anybody.
yeah, well, I've been told that you're a savant on the piano.
Oh,
So,
is that Jean? Thank you, Jeannie. Well, she let me do Morning Has Broken for her for the gymnastics team. I made a cassette, and that was like my big claim to fame. And Jeannie did a beautiful routine to that. But thank you. It's a very big part of my heart. I have a beautiful synthesizer, which my husband gave me several years ago, but it's really, really nice. I don't let anybody touch it. My grandkids are curious about it. I might let them, they play our piano all the time, but synthesizer is special to me. And it's enabled me to really pursue, a lot more of my arranging, which I really, really love to do.
cool. So Michael Lane.
Still here.
Is this, I saw Meredith behind you.
No, I think you saw our nanny behind us.
Oh, your nanny. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I mistook it. I was going to ask whether she was laughing at you.
No.
So the question goes to you. What did you want to do in school?
Well, I always wanted to get into radio, TV, and photography. Photography sort of fell to the wayside. Luckily I was able to get into TV and work in it, and and also do casting for TV and films and theater. The chicken business was something I never wanted to do, but wound up doing it and did it well. And I also supplied animals to Penn and Teller for their Broadway show, supplied animals for David Letterman's show, Conan O'Brien's show. So I was always the go-to guy because people knew I had been in the business. My mid-career goal was always early retirement, so I guess I achieved that. And I never knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, but it's probably the best job I ever had.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, so we're over to Jean. So this is the what influence did you get from Wantagh, from St. Francis, from anybody of your teachers going forward? The beach?
That's a hard question also. I really just feel like, I suppose it was a good education. I wasn't as aware at that age to appreciate it. There were some good teachers. I wouldn't say it was something that really stuck with me. I was restless. I did leave one semester. I don't have a good answer for that question. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm on a job interview.
Oh, I'm sorry. But you thought Mr. Bennett was a good teacher?
He was a little weird, a little flaky. I like Mr. Weber because he forced me to do public speaking, which I'm still terrible at. I love Mr. Ertz just for the fact that I was good in Spanish. I don't know. I was in the gym class a lot. I did gymnastics like all the time. I wasn't such a great student, I wouldn't say. I graduated and went to a college without grades, which was good for me. I'm maybe more a little artsy fartsy also. So I don't know.
I was going to say that Purchase and Hampshire were
Yes,
basically the same school at the time.
although Hampshire was a lot more expensive.
Yes, a lot more.
And Hampshire just went out of business.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
went to
and I went to a school program that had no grades either, but you could choose to have grades out at San Jose State, a part of it. So I did the grades function because
It's interesting. When I transferred to Stony Brook and I gave them my transcript to get credit, one comment I got from one of the departments was, "This is bullshit." And they wouldn't give you credit.
wow.
But you still graduated in 4 years.
Still graduated in 4 years. So
Yeah. I always knew that I wanted to get a PhD, so I knew that I needed grades. Even though I was out of the mainstream in schooling. So, and Fede, do you feel like there's an answer to that question? Anything about Wantal that compels you to say it was a great memory?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I felt like I had some sort of social issues. There was the girls. I never got into like all the girls stuff that was going on. But I mentioned Miss Axelrod, but I also was all the way from 7th grade on. I was in choir with Tom Farmer. And I mean, I had like mixed feelings about him all along, but he was very influential but I always had the feeling, I don't know, like I wasn't sure if he liked me, if he saw that I had any like musical value, but I was with him. So that was where I really mixed feelings about him, but yet I was in class with him for years and years and years. And then he left just before 75. So he left, I guess his last year was, the school year of 73, 74. And then he left. And then Doris Haycox, of course, was doing all the drama, all the shows that we were in. And she was an interesting one too. Pretty intimidating. So, I mean, I do feel like I got a really good education. And there were mixed feelings about it. It's funny. I don't know if anybody's like, yeah, rah, rah, it was awesome. Because it's a weird time to be a person at that age.
Yeah.
But probably, if everybody got together and talked about it, it'd be really interesting to hear like, oh, I was really insecure about this and I was really insecure about that. And we were all kind of like that probably, but I didn't realize that at the time. Then I also, I've always been a beach person since then, because I don't know about you guys, but what I did whenever I had any time is I got on the bus and went out to Jones Beach and just walked. I would just walk for hours going way down the beach. And that was super incredible to be able to do. I think that was a real joy to have the beach right near us, that we can't always appreciate. How many times in your life do you have that? Certainly when I was living in Colorado, there was no beach near me and I always missed it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that too. And it was nice to have the freedom for where I lived. I was able to walk to school, walk back. I had a lot of personal freedom. My sister is 10 years younger than me, so they were all interested in dealing with her and dealing with kind of my father's drama of financial issues and their weird marriage and stuff. So I sort of was like a free spirit. Like they didn't care when I came in. And, I would walk back and forth to school and hang out for the shows and all that stuff. So that was kind of a really good thing. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah.
Although it was also lonely, and probably a little more structure and a little more family would have been good for me. But,
Yeah. I'm picking up on your point. Gene, you need to hit the mute button.
Well,
I'm picking up on your point. If we had just been able at that point to share our insecurities, but we just didn't do that. We didn't admit what was going on, and it's this show. People often talk to me after the show, and they go, "I didn't know this about you. I didn't know this." And it's really interesting. Paul O'Brien said he graduated in the bottom of the class +2. And for somebody to admit that and to at this point feel free enough to say, I wasn't, I graduated at the bottom of the class, but it you never know what people are going through back then, and you always think everybody else has, a better life than you.
It's been interesting because, Ed Lent was a really good friend of mine. So it's very interesting watching his story and then where he's turned up. And Bruce Newberg was a really good friend of mine. So it's been interesting watching these shows and just kind of getting a perspective of where everybody went.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, from the people I have seen, nobody's really gone that far from exactly who they were, kind of. The essence of who they were in school sort of has followed them.
So I have this theory. If they were mean as shit in school, they're mean as shit now. And excuse the language, but we went to a reunion, and there was somebody at that reunion who was just as strange now as they were then. And nice people back then are nice now. So I'm going to go to Seth. Seth, real quickly, we're running out of time. So was there an influence, somebody that you already mentioned, or something about the town?
I think in that moment in time was great to grow up in. But I really craved diversity, different, seeing the world, and Wanto was not the place. I mean, for that. And I think I've not been back there. I see it. It's a different place. My neighborhood's very different than it was 40 years ago. The town's very different. And, we tend to romanticize things growing up and look at it differently. But I really think travel was the big thing. And in a way, I remember having a conversation in the year in the Warrior Room with some folks, and they never want to leave the town. They love it. They love it. They're going to raise their kids here. I think of thinking, I want to see the world. I felt like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. Had to go out see the world, and that's important. So it was a great place to be. But honestly, the minute I left high school, I never moved back. I never want to go back there. And my mom, 95 years old, even though she's a little memory loss, Huang Ming is still her favorite restaurant. We sort of joked that she's alive because all the salt has preserved her for all these years for Huang Ming. But I take her out there once every. I haven't done it a couple of years, but I'm glad I was there at the time, and I'm glad I left at the time. But I have fond memories, and the people, the friends, more except for a few teachers like Joan Rose, like I mentioned. I don't have a lot of memories of teachers. I think I spent my time in the Warrior cubby room upstairs, the second floor, with everybody, and as much as I could to avoid classes. My grades weren't that good, as my parents always reminded me. But it was a good place to be, and I'm glad I left. And I'm happy to see everybody.
Cool. And Freis.
Yeah. Gosh, first and foremost, the friendships, Jeannie and Sue and Debbie and Pat Varys and Lisa Fass and
And
just
Michael
Jeannie.
Lane.
Michael,
Michael Lane.
Michael, my man, I love you dearly. I know. We've been friends forever. But Glenn, when you asked me to think about my teachers, besides Mrs. Coleman in elementary school, I just thought of Mrs. Drinjack. I don't know if anybody remembers her. She was my 8th grade English teacher, and she was fabulous. I mean,
Yes.
talk about building our confidence, right?
Yes.
She was
She
great.
was the best.
Wasn't she
Best
great? I
teacher.
remember. Yes.
In fact, I emailed Glenn a few days ago to see if he could find. I know he knows how to connect, and he just teaches. He knows. But I would love to connect with her because she was the greatest influence politically and language-wise.
I don't remember politically, but I remember she got me up there. We had to take a card and go up and speak about an item, and mine was zipper, and I had to go up and talk about a zipper, and I was frantic, but she got me through it. And then I was thinking about our teachers, and I remember Mrs. Noto was my French teacher, and I remember Gigi Arnaud was on talking about the influence she had on us. I mean, she was fabulous and just gave us such confidence as young girls. And then I think another favorite teacher of mine was my 9th grade biology teacher, Mr. Reed, who was also my driver's ed teacher. And he was so nice and so kind and funny. And the best thing about him was he didn't make us dissect the frogs. He made us watch, but he didn't make us do it. And we did freeze some of the frogs. The poor frogs, I know we were upstairs and we let them out the window, but he wasn't even angry. So when I think about teachers and good times, and also Mrs. Rose, and I agree, she was a fabulous English teacher. I enjoyed her very much. And Mr. Weber too, Jeannie. I love that, we had to do our speeches and he got us through that somehow, some way. And I appreciated that as well. So, yeah.
That's cool. Michael.
Yes.
You're the last one.
Okay. I don't remember a lot of the teachers in class. The one thing I remember that's always had an influence on my life was Mr. Pepe, social studies teacher. One day in class, he started talking about something which was completely false, and we all started writing it down. And he gave us the lesson that not to trust authority just because they're in charge. So that sort of served me through my life. I think we got a great education, better than the kids get today, especially English writing. Here's what's on my desk, if you can read that.
Yes.
And it's like, I read scripts, that my wife gets for clients and stuff, and it's unbelievable how badly people write. And it gets me angry. So I think we got a great education. I mean, we've taken my son out of elementary school. He's doing homeschooling now, and he learns so much better at home. I mean, we still do socializing with his friends from school, but I think we got a great education. I think I have one regret. Leaving school early at the time was great, but looking back, I think I missed a few things. I missed that last year with my friends, and going to a prom, even though prom was not cool back then. I wish I'd had some of that, but if I hadn't left, I wouldn't have met my first wife. I wouldn't have my kids. I wouldn't have been on the trajectory that I was on. So, I think all in all, my main influences were my mother and father. I mean, my father worked harder than anybody I ever knew. And he gave up a lot, to give us a house and to, give us the life that he wanted us to have. So, that's what I can say.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I get to say the thing I always wanted to do was travel. That was what was most important to me. And I found jobs along the way, a great education, I don't know how much Wanta underpinned my great education, but college, I did great. And I've had a career that allowed me to travel to 116 countries. So so we get the life we want. And then I met Gene, and Gene said, if you're going to be with me, you can't travel.
Sorry.
So no. And I willingly gave it up. So we're all living the life we want to live. Otherwise we would change it. So anyway, that's it. We did it in an hour and 10 minutes. I truly appreciate you taking time to do this, particularly Jean. I want to thank her for doing this, and Anne and Michael. And Seth, I'm sorry I didn't know you, but now I feel like I do. And Anne Fede, I know how to pronounce your last name. And just so you know, people write to me after this, and they say how informative it is. It may seem different for you because you're being interviewed, but they find it really good. And the whole month of June, we're doing the class in 1971. In July, I'm doing classes 1963, 1960, 1958. I haven't told Gene this yet, but we're booked all the way out to August. So people are enjoying the show. So thank you very much. I know you have other things that you should be doing, and this show is now over. All right.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you, everybody. Great seeing you.
Bye.